I'm now going to introduce a man who has used his skills and enterprise to organise the biggest rock and roll concert the world has ever seen, twice. In its first week of release, his Band Aid single became the UK's fastest seller of all time, entering the chart at #1 and going on to sell over 3 million copies, making it the biggest selling single in UK history up to that point, and it eventually raised over 8 million. As the famine crisis in Africa continued, it became obvious that one song was not enough, and on the 13th of July 1985, Geldof organised Live Aid, the biggest rock and roll concert in history. Thanks to an unprecedented decision by the BBC to clear its schedules for 16 hours of rock music, the event was also broadcast live in the UK on television and radio. Ever controversial, Geldof infamously swore on live television, which has gone down in folklore as him saying, "Give us your fucking money." After the outburst, donations increased to £300 per second. In total, Live Aid raised 150 million for famine relief. In 2005, Geldof announced the Live 8 project to raise awareness of issues that burden Africa, including government debt, trade barriers, hunger, and AIDS issues. Geldof organised 6 concerts on the 2nd of July 2005 in large cities throughout the industrialised world. They featured musicians from different genres and locations around the world. The concerts influenced real policy change when the world leaders gathered in Gleneagles for the G8 summit on the 6th of July. Geldof has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 7 times, more than any other living person. He was granted a knighthood by Queen Elizabeth II and is a recipient of the Man of Peace title, which recognises individuals who have made an outstanding contribution to international social justice and peace. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sir Bob Geldof.
Mondays, tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. I want to shoot.
Thank you. First time I've seen a Scotsman stand up for an Irishman. Except, of course, when you beat us at rugby. But aside from that, thanks very much, everybody. It might seem rude that I haven't followed the convention of a black tie, but I thought it would be confusing, you know, singer black tie. You might think I'm Frank Sinatra or something, so it's easy to confuse this room, of course, with the glamorous 1950s Copacabana in Los Angeles. But I think I recognize most of the girls from Bruce's in 1977, or the Playhouse, or the Odeon, or indeed Murrayfield. So thanks, girls, for coming along again. I remember you all. It's a drag that this is the serious part of the night because, you know, as Josh sort of suggested, I mean, being honourable Scotsmen and women, you should all be gloriously pissed at this stage. Certainly if we're in Ireland, it's a guaranteed. But this is the bit where he wanted it to be serious. It's cool enough that you're the top of the game in this country of business. It's pretty good that this kid has decided to focus it on something that may be useful now, particularly now, besides business needing to regenerate growth, that there's something missing in the makeup of the market itself, in the makeup of capitalism itself, that has been missed. And it's pretty cool that he suggested to you people tonight that you can alter that maybe it should begin here. I know from whence he speaks, because I work with Eunice on the Africa Progress panel, which is the result of Gleneagles. Gleneagles was a game changer. Finally, the 7 richest nations understood that debt relief wasn't some cockamamie issue, that it actually held entire nations back, nations who could never repay the small amount of money they were given in the first place, and whatever they produced would have to go out in debt relief, money that the citizens of that country never knew they owed, and money that we didn't care less about and didn't know that we were owed. There was lots of talk pre-85 or pre-2005 about moral hazard. Well, we don't hear about moral hazard now. Everyone's talking the debt relief game. We don't hear much more now about the efficacy of aid or not. We just call it quantitative easing. We live off debt relief and we live off aid. So those things that a good few of us and some of us in this room specifically talked about and supported happened that great day in Scotland in 2005, a day that Kofi Annan called the Rubicon crossing moment for Africa. The day that President Obasanjo of Nigeria said, the West finally got serious and understood. The consequence of that, so you know what happened in your country, with the huge support of this city, and maybe you're young enough to remember, or old enough to remember, when I called for a mass march on this city where the churches would open their doors and people would all kip there, and the city council, not obsessed with building their useless trams, freaked out and tried to ban me from coming, and I think Lord Steele had something pertinent to say, as ever, on something he knows fuck all about. But what happened was that suddenly this giant continent 8 miles from ours became open for business. Since that, for me, in my life, great day in Glen Eagles, 42 million children have gone to school, which we said would happen, provided you rid them of that great burden that they could never pay and didn't know they owed. 42 million children. And the consequences of that are what we hoped would happen. With the Chinese and their massive investments, and the Indians and their massive investments, and the debt relief, which was our investment, the continent has taken off. Now, I do a lot of business in my life, and 8 days ago, I was able to do a first close on a private equity fund for Africa that I set up called 8 Miles. We closed at $200 million Thursday, and we will close for we do a final close in 18 months of 480 million to provide work, businesses for this giant, this coming giant, who last year spent more on consumer goods than Brazil, where Walmart, Harley-Davidson, KFC and McDonald's have opened in the last year, who in 2020 will have the largest youth working population in the world, larger than China, larger than India, whose cities are the fastest growing of our century, where there are more than 52 cities of 1 million people, the same as Europe and more than India or China. This is a monster arriving, and it's 8 miles from us. But beyond that, great hopeful story that things do change, and they change on a pin, and we're sort of not aware of it. And we speak now of this moment. We're living through an absolute truth of globalization, that when the rich become less rich, the poor get even poorer. Now, the system has always been asymmetric. Could it be otherwise? When half the world live on less than $2 a day. How? How do you do that? When 1 billion people live on less than $1 a day. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot live on less than $1 a day. You die. When 40% of the world, 40% live on 6% of the global income. This is the giant Ponzi scheme that we delight in calling the global economy. Now, any system in this state of disequilibrium will fail because asymmetry is inherently unstable. It is unbalanced. it will topple over, and it has. Not just the economy. When a small kleptocracy like Angola can determine the pace of growth in China simply by its production of raw materials, it is asymmetric. When men and women with dynamite strapped to their chests can destroy armies, it is asymmetric. When the world economy fails because it will not incorporate half of the planet, it falls over, and it has. This is a failure not simply within the system, but of the system itself. Therefore, any new rules we need to make in order to rebuild ourselves out of this current carnage, they must be unbreakable, they must be regulated, and above all, and finally, they must be inclusive.